Hello! In today's video we are going to smoke pork tenderloins. There are plenty of recipes for smoked raw tenderloins, so in today's video we will compare two ways of curing, wet and dry. I will show you how I prepare both versions of the tenderloins, how to smoke them correctly, and at the end we will compare whether it is better to curing your meat wet or dry. Let's start. All the accessories I use can be found in the links in the description below the video. At the beginning, we truly rinse our tenderloins and wipe them with the paper towel. Then we cut off all the white membranes and fat residues. Half of the tenderloins I cure dry. We weigh each of the tenderloins and add the right proportion of curing salt. For 1 kg of meat I use 22 grams of curing salt. When the right amount of salt is weighed, sprinkle it on the tenderloin and rub it truly into the meat. I cure one tenderloin with salt only, while to the other I add granulated garlic in the amount of 10 grams for each kilogram of meat. When our tenderloins are truly wrapped with curing salt and spices, we put them in the vacuum bag and suck the air out of them. Now we do the wet curing version. The first step is to weigh the meat. We need it to determine the right amount of water, salt and the spices we will need for the brine. To do that, take the pot and pour the right amount of water into it. For 1 kg of meat for curing, we need 400 ml of water. In this case, I pour 450 ml because I only pickle 2 tenderloins and I might have a problem to completely immerse them in the brine. We put curing salt in the water in the proportion of 90 grams for each kilogram of meat and the spices. All proportions of salt and spices are in the description under the video. Remember that these are tenderloins, so do not overdo it with spices. This type of meat is good in itself and doesn't need additional flavors. If you like your meat more seasoned, feel free to increase the amount of spices. When all the ingredients are in the pot, turn on the stove, bring the brine to boil, cook it for 2-3 minutes over the low heat and then turn it off and leave it to cool completely. Pour the cooled brine through a sieve and put the tenderloins in it. They must be completely submerged. For this purpose you can press them down with a plate or another object. Put the tenderloins prepared in this way in the fridge and leave it to cure for the next 5 days. We turn the wet cured tenderloins in the brine once a day, while the dry cured tenderloins we do absolutely nothing. At this point we can see that the dry curing is much simpler and takes less time. In the evening, one day before smoking, remove the tenderloin from the brine, hang it on the hook and leave the meat to drip. Put it in the fridge or another cool place. It is important not to rinse the meat from the brine. The proportions of salt in the brine are so selected that we do not have to worry about the so-called crust being too salty. By rinsing the meat, we get rid of the outer protective layer that we have created by leaving it in the brine for the last 5 days. On the next day, which is the day of smoking, we take the dry cured tenderloins out of the vacuum bags. In the case of dry curing, we do not need to drip the meat before smoking. Take all the tenderloins from the fridge and leave it at the room temperature until we properly prepare our smokehouse. In the video I discuss the smoking of tenderloins, but I also smoke another meats. If you like the video, leave a comment if you want more videos like that on this channel. We light a fire in our smokehouse. The first step is to properly heat the smokehouse and get rid of the moisture. We add quite a lot of wood so that a lot of embers are created from it, which will be needed for the next, probably the most important stage of smoking, which is drying the meat. Only well-dried meat will give us nice and healthy smoked meats. Probably some of you are wondering why their smoked meats are very dark, sometimes even black. This is due to poor or completely none of meat drying. The smoke, instead of blowing over the meat and gives it the characteristic aroma of smoking, it sticks to moist places and the kind of soot is created. Unfortunately, this makes a bad taste of smoked products and a whole lot of toxic and carcinogenic compounds. Not to mention poor and not very appetizing look. Returning to the video, in order to dry the meat, we put it in the heated, moisture-free smokehouse in which the temperature is in the range of 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. When drying, we try to have no smoke at all or have it as little as possible. We leave the doors of the smokehouse slightly open so that there is an air circulation, which will help us get rid of the moisture from the meat faster. Dry the tenderloins until they feel like a paper or a tissue paper. They should be completely dry and rough to the touch. Drying takes about 30 minutes to 1 hour. The next step is smoking. We add wood so that there is a lot of smoke in the smokehouse. Make sure the wood is relatively dry. It is best to smoke with deciduous or fruit wood. I use a mixture of oak and beech wood in the video. In the smokehouse, we maintain the temperature of 40 to 50 degrees Celsius for about 4 hours. We smoke the meat until we get a satisfactory color. For me, it takes about 4 hours, but it might be different. Sometimes, when the temperature stays around 50 degrees and there is a lot of smoke in the smokehouse, 3 hours might be enough. After 4 hours, the tenderloins should look like in the video. Depending on the type of meat and desired effect, we can parboil the smoked meat in the water or bake it in the smokehouse by increasing the temperature. This time, however, I want to get raw smoked tenderloin. I leave the tenderloins to cool completely and you can see the final effect in the video. So, the final conclusion. Both versions of the tenderloin come out very good. As you can see on the screen on the left, we have a dry cured tenderloins and on the right we have a wet cured. Wet cured tenderloins have a looser meat structure and are more delicate. They are also more difficult to cut into the thin slices. Dry cured meat have a more dense structure with a distinct crust. They are in no way harder than wet cured ones and in my opinion they look better. In the taste test, I do not detect any differences. The great advantage, however, is the method of preparing dry curing. We don't have to make a brine, pour them in this brine to make sure that they are completely submerged. We also skip the dripping stage. I personally choose dry cured tenderloins. If you like the video, please leave the thumbs up and a comment. I also invite you to subscribe to my channel.